Welcome to another OU Insider YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune and the producer on the other side that one day you guys will get to meet. We keep saying that and teasing it, but it will happen one day. We're here to talk to you guys about National Signing Day, the big Junior Day weekend this past Saturday and Sunday with Oklahoma, and seemingly also Friday if you want to talk about Derek LeBlanc and the time that he's been in Norman. He just left today, which is crazy. The 5-star defensive lineman out of Orlando left Oklahoma or OKC today. He wasn't actually on campus today. He was on campus Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but he left this morning out of Oklahoma City. And so he might as well put up as Steve Wiltfong joked with me earlier today, he might as well put up a postal service and got his mail changed to Oklahoma. He was there for so long. Parker, what a weekend it was for the Oklahoma Sooners. What a week leading up to National Signing Day we have going with our Mason Thomas looking to make a decision, the 4-star defensive lineman or edge rusher out of Fort Lauderdale, Cardinal Gibbons High School. His teammate, Ahmed Moten, the 3-star looming kind of 4-star guy out of Cardinal Gibbons High School as well. You have Jamarian Burt, the safety out of Florida, looking to make a decision. Did he visit Miami? Did he visit Missouri? We'll talk about that here coming up in just a minute. Obviously, you got Mr. Freeman out of Heritage Hall that just committed to Oklahoma as a preferred walk-on. He had a scholarship to Texas Tech. Somehow Oklahoma flipped that last night, and now you have another big addition to the 2022 class. Obviously, you got a commitment out of Edrick Mccarty, the 2023 athlete star, speedster, kind of safety player out of McAllister that just announced this past weekend as well. And there is more to come likely from that Junior Day weekend. Lots to cover. Parker, how have you been?
Well, Brandon, like you said, I think we all have been busy over the last few days just covering all of the various happenings, particularly from this Junior Day weekend. Saturday was one of the busiest crystal ball days I think we have had in the time that I've been with 24/7. I mean, crystal ball predictions were flying in from us, from national experts, from other team site guys. And it wasn't just the obvious, right? It wasn't just Edrick Mccarty. It wasn't just Gavin Freeman. Obviously, the Sooners hosted guys like Dylan Edwards, the tremendously productive running back out of Derby, Kansas, and that visit went swimmingly. We've known for quite a while now that Oklahoma was in the driver's seat for Ashton Kozart, the supremely talented 4-star wideout out of Flower Mound Marcus. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There were so many guys on campus this weekend, and you cited Derek LeBlanc as a perfect example, that maybe nobody has the confidence to enter a crystal ball in favor of Oklahoma yet, but there's a lot of reason to believe that at this point in time, the Sooners could very well be in the driver's seat for a guy like that.
Yeah, it was something else. I'm telling you, when I talked to LeBlanc earlier last night, he spoke really highly of Oklahoma. And here's the funny thing. I can't quite pin down whether it's his cousin or the sister of his trainer that is the assistant volleyball coach at the University of Oklahoma. So that in right there, and along with Peyton Kirkland, who also is a very close friend with Derek LeBlanc, 4-star offensive lineman out of Orlando, Dr. Phillips High School over there right next to Universal Studios. I went and visited him last summer. And it was really cool. Or last football season, we went by and visited him, and it was really cool to see. Like, you can hear the roller coasters on the field while they're practicing, like the people screaming going down the hills and stuff like that. So it's a different little area, but a really cool school and a big time player that Peyton Kirkland is, and him and Derek LeBlanc are really close. And Derek told me, not Derek, but Peyton told me that, hey, like, my trainer's relative is the assistant coach for the volleyball team, Oklahoma's volleyball team. And at that point in time, it didn't really register how big a deal that might be for OU moving forward. But then when you see the Derek LeBlanc visit and you see the kid shows up on Friday and doesn't leave till today out of the state of Oklahoma, that's huge. And he obviously went back yesterday, hung out with the staff again, and Oklahoma is feeling mighty confident in a guy that was supposed to be visiting Clemson yesterday. He ends up in Norman for 4 days. 4 days on a visit. So that's a huge deal. That's not something Oklahoma fans are kind of used to after a while, having a big time 5-star, with zero like legacy connection show up, especially on the defensive line, show up to Norman and be that interested in OU, number one, and number two, really feel that there's a chance for things to move in a really good direction for Oklahoma there. And it seems like they already are. So uh, among that, you got Eric Mccarty making his commitment. He's an OU legacy, one of the fastest rising guys in all of OK Preps. He's gotten offers from a bunch of P5 schools over the last month or two. And I don't know that that's going to stop, but what we do know is that he's probably not going to take any more visits. That's one of those type of kids that's really locked in. You also have Gentry Williams signing with Oklahoma on Wednesday at 3:30 at Booker T. Washington. It's going to be a busy week for Oklahoma fans and naturally a good week. Now, obviously, the week didn't start out great as far as Oklahoma fans see it when you lose a 4-star wide receiver in Deandre Moore, but that recruitment seemed to be trending away. Now, obviously, DeMarco Murray and Kel Gundy were always, recruiting DeAndre. But I don't know that the staff as a whole, whether it be Brent Venables, whether it be Jeff Lebby, whoever it may be, I don't know that they really felt he was there yet. Like they were recruiting him, but it wasn't as hard as the previous staff was recruiting him. And I think that's, to me, kind of the biggest fallout in all of this. So I really don't know what else to say about the DeAndre Moore situation. So it's gotten to be kind of a weird deal. Spencer, did we lose Parker here? Am I crazy? Did we lose Parker?
I'm still here. My video function appears to have malfunctioned. So let me check on that.
Well, I mean, keep going talking while you're doing that, or I'll do one or the other. That's fantastic. I'll tell you all this. If Oklahoma can somehow pull off our Mason Thomas, if they can pull off Ahmed Moten, Jamarian Burt, obviously you've got Gentry Williams. I think the way that and Grayson Halton's going to be announcing as well, the 4-star defensive lineman. Now he's down to Oregon, Oklahoma, and I believe Miami. I think Oklahoma is in a prime spot for the 4-star defensive lineman out of San Diego, California. So if they can pull out and end up with, our Mason Thomas, Ahmed Moten, Grayson Halton, Gentry Williams, you got Freeman, among other things. You're back, Parker. I think that's a great way to end the 2022 class. I really, really do. I think that it's more than good. I think it's great, actually. And I think Oklahoma stays in that top 10 range, whether it's 8, 9, 10. And that's kind of, if you're looking to win a national title, you always want to be in that top 10. You always want to at least try to be you want to end strong. This is Captain Obvious here. You want to end strong on National Signing Day. And it looks like Oklahoma is going to do just that if they keep the momentum that they've got going on right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And obviously it is a little bit idealistic to sit here and say that they're going to get all 7 of the guys that they're still in on.
Yeah, no way.
It's very realistic that they could snag 4 or 5 of those guys.
Exactly.
And at that point, particularly with how things unfolded over the final half of the 2021 season, you've got to be really pleased with where Oklahoma landed and all that. It's very seldom, Brandon, that you see a team undergo a wholesale coaching change, complete with a large portion of the staff not being retained, and yet still maintain a top 10 recruit.
I mean, all you gotta do is look at Miami struggling right now. I mean, they're struggling for a variety of reasons. They're struggling because they have, they don't even have a defensive coordinator, nor do they have an offensive coordinator yet. So I think first and foremost, I think that's probably the biggest snafu that Cristobal is running into right now. And the guys that he does have, the fans are worried about them leaving for other jobs. So I think that plays in Oklahoma's favor with a lot of this stuff. But I think when you're talking about R. Mason Thomas, I think it also plays in the favor of Iowa State here, because that is the program that's been there from day one. You know, they've been recruiting him harder than anybody else. And Matt Campbell has done a fantastic job with that recruitment. I mean, he has continued to show up time and again and make it very difficult for a blue blood like Oklahoma to make a flip. And generally speaking, that doesn't happen very often. If Oklahoma throws their name in a hat of an Iowa State commit, that Iowa State commit generally ends up at Oklahoma. But it also shows you the change in the view of what Iowa State is as a program. And I think that is lost on some people. Like, we're talking about a program that has competed for a Big 12 title in 2020. They were a good program in 2021. They were a good program in 2019. They haven't been a slouch in probably 4 or 5 years. And as long as Matt Campbell's running that program, and it doesn't look like he wants to go anywhere anytime soon because he keeps turning programs down. I mean, he's had offers. I mean, USC went after him. All these programs went after him. And I know you fans are like, what? USC went after Matt? Yeah, USC went after Matt Campbell. He told them no. They went after Lincoln Riley, and now look who's got what now. Like saying so. I mean, the program for Iowa State is way different than what. And I've talked to some people that were looking to transfer there potentially, and they all said the same thing. They're like, man, when you walk in there, you're thinking like this place is going to be just a run of the mill, like a lower P5 program, and they have everything you need and more. They have thrown so much at their facilities that they're up there with the Oklahomas, the Ohio States of the world as far as facilities go now, and they can compete at that level. Now, the difference is you have Oklahoma City and you have Ames, Iowa. I mean, when you're talking about Norman and, where OU and Iowa State are located or kind of, location does matter in this. And I think you and I talked about this, Parker, and if you were going to flip or stay committed to somebody and you were going to the Big 12, does it make more sense a kid from Fort Lauderdale to go to Ames, Iowa, or does it make more sense to go to Oklahoma City, Norman, Oklahoma?
That makes a lot more sense to go to Norman. And that's, with these types of recruitments, particularly these ones that go down to the wire, that's something you got to do is you got to kind of read between the lines. And look, it makes a lot of sense. And I'd reported earlier last week that I just didn't get the sense Miami was going to end up being a major player for R. Mason Thomas. And it's because when a kid from Fort Lauderdale, Florida commits to a school like Iowa State, it's pretty clear at that point in time that he wants to get out of Miami, and that that culture and that particular vibe just isn't where he sees himself spending the next 4 years. And so I found it very hard to believe, particularly when you consider the fact, as you mentioned earlier, that Miami hasn't hired a new defensive coordinator yet. I just found it tough to believe that even getting his last official visit, Miami was going to make any noise for R. Mason Thomas. But you bring up a good point. If you're trying to get out of South Florida and you're committed to Iowa State, and the other option on the table is somewhere like Oklahoma, and we know that Thomas has a very solid relationship with Brent Venables going back to the Clemson days, just kind of reading between the lines there, you would think, right, that Oklahoma would be the school and would be the spot for R. Mason Thomas when it's all said and done. And the Sooners have been in the driver's seat for more than a minute with regard to Ahmad Moten's recruitment. And I don't expect that to change unless there's just a seismic shift in the sands over the next 36 hours or so. But I think there is a growing confidence that he's going to be a Sooner when all is said and done. I would have figured Thomas was a lock to OU even as recently as 2 weeks ago. And now you're hearing some late buzz for Iowa State. As you mentioned, I don't buy Miami. I don't really buy Kentucky, but I think he's either going to stick it out with the Cyclones or he'll be a Sooner. And considering that those are the two options on the table, I really think he's going to be a Sooner, Brandon. I really don't see Oklahoma losing a recruiting battle to Iowa State. And maybe that's presumptuous. And I understand that Iowa State has a lot going for it in terms of facilities and in terms of the investments that they have made into their program. But still, particularly given Thomas's relationship with Venables, Oklahoma's in a really, really good spot here. And if he ends up choosing to stay at Iowa State over Oklahoma, I'm just going to have to be wrong. And it wouldn't be the first time, but I don't know. When you have Oklahoma sitting there waiting in the wings and willing to take your commitment, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a guy like that to hang with Iowa State unless Matt Campbell has just really done a heck of a job cultivating that type of relationship, which is a very Matt Campbell thing to do.
It is, and it looks like he may have done just that, and which is making this a lot harder on OU. Brent Venables and Miguel Chavis, I mean, they're putting in the work. They're doing everything they can. Obviously, I think you also have to take in consideration if you're an OU fan or if you're a Iowa State fan or a Miami fan to look at what is Ahmad Moten going to do? Because yes, they've said, "Oh, we're not a package deal. We're not this. We're not that." Dude, you're two best friends. You played on the same team. You just won a state title together. Are you really not going to go play together? I think that's another question. I think and something that we're going to know on Wednesday, one way or the other, if they were really speaking facts or if that was just them trying to make it not so noticeable that they were one was going to follow the other type of deal. So that if one of them leaked out as far as where one was going to go, you weren't for sure what the other was going to do type of deals. So, and kids are savvy enough. People don't want to give them credit. They're savvy enough to think that far ahead. I promise you. I've seen it done before. So these kids are not stupid. I'll tell you what. And I know somebody just asked about what's going on with Deandre Moore. And I talked about it just a second ago. Look, and I want to word this right before I say any more than I already did. Because I don't know that Oklahoma's done recruiting Deandre Moore. I don't know that they went all in on him the way that he thought they might whenever he came out and proclaimed his 100% committed to Oklahoma and all this. I don't know that the new staff has really bought into the idea of Deandre Moore. Now, that may sound weird to Oklahoma fans, being that he's one of the top 100 players in the country. He's a great receiver, but you've got to also understand he's coming off of a knee surgery and a knee injury. The new staff may feel like, hey, we're in a really good spot with Ashton Kozar. We're in a really good spot with Jaden Greathouse. We're starting to make a surge for Jayden Hill. You know, like, why would they, I guess, put all their eggs in one basket with Deandre Moore when they feel like maybe they've got players closer and players that maybe vibe with Jackson Arnold better than maybe a Deandre Moore does. Now, Deandre Moore seemed like a really good fit when it was Malachi Nelson. Now that you have Jackson Arnold, things have changed a little bit as far as the dynamics of the wide receiver recruiting goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing you got to keep in mind too is that as things stood in the wide receiver room previously, before Lincoln and his staff left, Brandon, there was a legitimate question as to whether Ashton Kozar was going to be a take for Oklahoma because they might already been
and now
full.
He looks like he's one of the top wide receivers for him.
Exactly. And we were sitting there throughout the 2021 season watching Ashton Kozar ball out and thinking, how in the world do you not make room for this kid? And obviously one thing leads to another. And now he's arguably Oklahoma's top wide out on the board in the class of 2023, or at least the one that they have the most viable chance with. And for my money, Jayden Hill is the best wide out in this class overall. I think that dude is a freak of an athlete and not the type of guy that you see come around in every class. And so if Oklahoma can close on him, that's huge, particularly because they didn't appear in his top 12, which was released, I want to say, just days after Lincoln Riley announced that he was departing for USC. So that's a big win. Ashton Kozar is a big win if they can get those two. And then you got to consider the fact that hey, you may have some wide receivers a lot closer to home that might have a desire to stick around and play for the Sooners. I think about a guy that just picked up an Alabama offer about an hour ago, Cole Adams out of Owasso. That is a bad dude. And if there is an in-state wideout in the class of 2023 that is more than capable of playing high-level football at the University of Oklahoma, it's him. And I know Oklahoma is naturally kind of behind the eight ball now that Alabama's offered and several other big-time programs have offered. Arkansas's offered. But, man, you gotta do everything you can to get Cole Adams
He's so good
in Norman.
He's so good.
Because he is so good.
Yeah, he's so good. I've watched him 4 times last year, and he was just he balled out every time I watched him. I mean, he's a legit like 10-6, 10-5, 10-7 type, 100-meter guy. Like, he's a freak of an athlete.
The speed is there, and I'll tell you what, he plays a lot bigger than 5'10". The way he can get up and jump and his catch radius, like that is not your average 5'10" wide receiver, not by a long shot. Now, back to the feedback and questions from listeners. Steven says I should buy a light. Now, let me tell you this, Steven. I'm getting a light. Should have had a light for this stream, but Amazon decided to delay my delivery. However, I did get a 20% refund, so I guess silver lining there. But I will be better lit when we do this show next week, and hopefully we'll have the technical difficulties worked out with the camera situation. But yes, we are debuting new technology here. On the topic of the transfer portal, Brandon, this has kind of become a conversation that has shifted in nature and almost kind of disappeared off a lot of people's radars in the last couple of days, ever since Jackson Dart and Michael Trigg announced that they were headed to Ole Miss. And
we were so shocked.
Oh, man. I know we've touched on this before, but once spring ball comes and goes, at that point, you almost have a second wave with regard to the transfer portal.
Correct.
Guys who go through spring ball with their team, realize, love the fit, and want to look elsewhere. Perfect example last year. I mean, that Mike Woods ended up in Norman from the University of Arkansas. So as you kind of gaze into your proverbial crystal ball, Brandon, at what the Sooner roster is going to look like on the other side of spring ball, are there any other positions right now? And quarterback is the real obvious one, but are there any other positions where you feel like Oklahoma could add a transfer or two?
Okay. I think they're going to add an edge, or at least try to. I think they're going to add, or at least try to add another wide receiver out of the transfer portal. Obviously, they're going to take another quarterback. I mean, that is first and foremost. And I honestly wouldn't be shocked to see them dip their toes after they've got to feel and see what they like with the running backs on campus. If they feel like they're a great fit, if they don't feel like maybe one or the other's not a good fit, maybe there's some buzz of a running back transferring. We don't know. I mean, that hasn't happened yet, so we don't know if it's going to happen or not going to happen. I think running back's another position, and I think tight end. I think Oklahoma has been looking for a Michael Trigg-esque guy, and we've heard buzz, and you kind of heard buzz maybe of Darnell Washington hopping in the portal from Georgia. It never happened. I mean, that was the buzz on the Georgia side of things. Like, everybody thought he was gonna go. The second JT Daniels hopped his name in the portal, everybody's like, oh, is Darnell Washington gonna follow him? Because he's removed all of his stuff from Instagram and Twitter. All this Georgia stuff was gone, and yada yada yada. And he kept tweeting out, have a tough decision to make, blah blah blah. Now it looks like he's going to ride it out through at least spring. Does he make it past spring and not enter the portal? I think that's the bigger question, because you still have Oscar Delp showing up on campus. And last time I checked, their tight end was a freshman that was a superstar anyways. So
yeah, I mean, Brock Bowers is already maybe the best tight end in the nation.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I could see him throwing his name in the portal. And if he does, remember, he played at Desert Pines. Desert Pines is out of Las Vegas. Las Vegas, its head coach is David Hill. David Hill is close with DeMarco Murray. Could that end up being a thing? We don't know. That is just it's all hearsay at this time, and I don't know. Nobody really knows. But the buzz for Darnell Washington in the portal would be something that I would find interesting if Oklahoma was to go down that route. Now, here's the funny thing is it could never happen at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like literally could never happen. He could maybe never enter the portal. And there's a good chance of that happening. He could end up deciding, you know what? I'm going to stick it out at Georgia. There's going to be some other quarterbacks that throw their name out in the portal. And guess what? After all these guys that throw their name in the portal, right? Well, I'm not starting at Alabama, so I'm going to try to transfer to Oklahoma. So you're going to transfer someplace that you're almost guaranteed that you're probably not going to start at that place too, because you're looking to go someplace that's equally as good as what you just left, but you feel like you have a better shot to start. And I think that's some of the things that some of these kids do. And then they're like, why am I not starting at this place? I transferred here thinking I was going to start. Dude, you weren't starting where you just left. And you just went from Alabama to Oklahoma. There isn't a huge drop off in talent between the two programs as far as like the starters go. So you're probably not gonna, start if you do that too. And that was just such a broad example of what we see, but that's generally what happens with the spring transfers. And I've seen it the last few years. Mike Woods was a prime example. He went from Arkansas to Oklahoma thinking that's even a step up. And he had like 600 yards as a junior for Arkansas. How many did he have at Oklahoma? What, 300?
400.
400? 400. Oh, my bad. 400. So he didn't even have the year that he had at Arkansas. If he would have stayed, he probably would have had more, honestly.
Probably would have had a lot more.
Yeah, because everybody was trying to get Traylon Burke. I mean, they were trying to double team him, and he would have been wide open a lot. Didn't have that at Oklahoma. So I don't know. I think the spring transfers are kind of wishy-washy at this point, and we just threw a bunch of names out there that have been rumored to maybe be leading their way to the transfer portal, and you watch none of them happen with our luck.
All right, Brandon, on to our next viewer question, I should say. Underrated 23 guy to keep an eye on with regard to Oklahoma. And we were just talking about Cole Adams out of Owasso. We were just talking about Eric McCarty, who obviously picked up his OU offer in late December and committed 4 weeks later. And it doesn't necessarily have to be local, but who's maybe one guy in 2023 that isn't ranked right now, or at least not ranked very high, that you think, you could be in the mix for when all is said and done, and would be a big add for the program?
There's a player out at Mustang named Kaden Jones that has been getting some P5 looks, defensive lineman, 3-star guy. If he has a big senior year, I think he's a guy that could get some looks. He's always been kind of an up and down kind of kid. Kentucky was looking at him really hard. Louisville was looking at him really hard. He took some visits to Memphis and a couple other places over the summer, and I believe he's got offers from a couple of those places. So he's a kid out of the state of Oklahoma, I think, that could make a surge later on. It's so early right now to kind of make that, because they're counting on, we haven't even got to go through the evaluation period, honestly, and that's spring. And for us to sit here and say, well, watch this guy, and this guy, I think it's just too early for that, because they have the guys that they're really in on and they've pinpointed early. And that's going to be their sole focus until they go on the evaluation tour and they get to see these kids actually play football in the spring. And until then, that's just a huge guess that is going to be really hard to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think probably tops on my list would be a guy that's a low 4-star right now out of North Kansas City High School, Edrick Hill, who's a defensive lineman.
Yeah, he's
I know he was on the radar for the former staff at Oklahoma, and he's very much on the radar for the current staff. He's also got a teammate, PJ Adebawore, who is an edge rusher. And that is a guy that has picked up a lot of steam on the recruiting trail as of late, added Oregon and Michigan among other offers this past week. So Those two guys, particularly being high school teammates, a lot of their offers are going to come paired with one another. And it wouldn't shock me to see Oklahoma jump in the race for those two. I know for a fact that the school's monitoring them for the moment. And at that point in time, if they did offer, Oklahoma would very immediately become a big player for their services. And I think that's another thing, and that's another dynamic. We may have touched on it already in one of our previous streams, but I think it'll be interesting to see how well and how effectively Brent Venables recruits the Kansas/Missouri area, particularly that region in Kansas City, because let me tell you, one guy that he's going to be going toe to toe with for a lot of those elite prospects in the area is Dan Lanning, who, Brandon, there was a time at which it looked like Dan Lanning might be Oklahoma's next head coach. But regardless, you have two guys who are very well tied in geographically there. Venables is naturally a Kansas guy. Lanning is a West Missouri guy. And so that is the stomping grounds. That is the home turf for both of those guys. And as long as Lanning is at Oregon and as long as Venables is at Oklahoma, they're going to be pursuing a lot of the very same guys.
And we talked about this on the phone the other day. You got to kind of feel sorry for the Nebraskas of the world, the Missouris, the Kansas States of the world, the Arkansas of the world that really rely on that region to help pull in some talent to add to their rosters. When you have now two big time programs, one being a blue blood, another one being an up and coming program. And that has been an up and coming program for the last 20 years in Oregon. That makes life a little bit more difficult on you if you're those programs, because generally speaking, those two are going to win out more often than not when it comes to the talent. If it's going to be a head to head battle, you might as well go ahead and just wave the white flag if you're those other programs that I just named, because you're not going to compete at the same level as those two. You just aren't. Now, Arkansas may be able to do that, but the other ones, and I know this sounds really bad with Nebraska and Missouri and Kansas State being such good football programs over the years, they're still not Oregon or Oklahoma. So, I mean, there's that too. When all is said and done, anybody that has Phil Knight attached to him as a donor is going to be a big name program no matter what. And look what they've done with the athletics over the last 20 years at Oregon. They're good at everything. I mean, so good at everything.
All right, Brandon, let's throw out the doomsday. Well, it's not necessarily a doomsday scenario, because I think it's a scenario a lot of fans would be on board with, but it would cause a little bit of chaos. What if after all of this, Caleb Williams decides to stay at Oklahoma? What then?
Well, if he decides to stay at Oklahoma, he's a starting quarterback, and Dylan Gabriel's your backup quarterback. And Dylan Gabriel has a hardship year, and he's got a redshirt year. So he's essentially got 4 years to play 3, essentially. So that's perfectly fine in that situation. And that would probably be a perfect scenario. That would not be the doom. That'd be the opposite of doomsday if you're Oklahoma. That would be the perfect scenario if you're Jeff Lebby and Brent Venables, because you would have your guy for another 2 years that is arguably one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in college football. And then it would be followed up with a dude that's already thrown for 8,000 yards and 70 plus touchdowns. Come on now. That's living the dream. Now, the problem you would run into is what happens to Nick Evers, because I don't know that he sticks around for all that.
Yeah, and Evers particularly being the guy that Oklahoma made such a heavy and successful late push to get in the 2022 class. That's not really a guy you want to alienate either. No. And I've heard nothing but good things, and I don't know if you've heard the same, Brandon, but Nick Evers has made such a strong first impression on everybody in that building, and his natural leadership qualities are already starting to shine through in that locker room. And so that is a guy that you want to keep around by any means necessary. And so if Caleb Williams comes back, that is the thing you worry about is, okay, maybe you have your starting quarterback for the next 2 years figured out, but did you just maybe throw a wrench in your future plans beyond those 2 seasons? It creates a lot to think about, but
This
The
is the
nice
horrible
thing
what
is,
ifs, but it's not happening, by the way.
yeah, well, yeah, I think we're all on the same page in that regard. But it is nice though that Jeff Lebby appears to have adopted a strategy that has a bit more leeway than the one Lincoln Riley adopted, which is you recruit one quarterback every 2 years, and that's your guy. Jeff Lebby is spreading a broader net, and he's recruiting at least one quarterback in every single signing class, or at least so it appears. And that's Nick Evers in 2022, Jackson Arnold in 2023. You look ahead to 2024. Is it maybe Mabry Mathieu? Is it Cole Welliver? There are a lot of names on the board. Jayden Davis, who's the #1 overall prospect in the country right now. A lot of names that Oklahoma could target in the class of
Jayden Davis
2024, but
camped at Oklahoma too. Of course,
yes,
that was the previous regime.
and was very impressive.
Yeah, he was unbelievable.
A lot to consider with regard to that whole quarterback conversation, but at the end of the day, I think what we're getting at and the moral of the story here is that Jeff Lebby has cast a broad enough net that the future of the program and the solvency of the offense isn't tied to just one guy.
No.
Interesting question that we had a real clear answer to last year when they offered him, but may not be as clear anymore. Brandon, does OU still want Mycates as a defensive back, or is there a chance he maybe plays wide receiver?
DB. Oh, it's got to be DB. Yeah. Look, I know I'm making that sound definitive, and it's probably not. And I think the same thing goes for Jacoby Johnson. I know for a fact that he had a meeting with Coach Falai. I mean, he told me as much, and he also met with Coach Gundy. So, man, I think those are two guys you bring in. And you say, well, we'll see what side you fit in best with us, because they're two freak athletes. Well, two of the best in the country too.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that kind of makes this whole dynamic interesting is that not only are they two freak athletes, but they're two legitimately incredible wide receivers.
Yes.
Those guys could be Power 5 multi-year starters who could rack up a lot of production with Power 5 wide receivers, particularly Johnson, who's 6'3", 190, and just has ball skills like nobody's business. So yeah, I think there's a definite case for turning a guy like Tease, who doesn't have as much size as Jacoby Johnson, into a defensive back. And I think the argument's definitely there that Mycates' ceiling is higher at DB. But I think there's also a very legitimate argument that Jacoby Johnson's ceiling is higher on the offensive side as well.
Yeah, no, I know that's what, when you talk to the Mustang staff, that's what they always tell me. Like, man, he's going to be a great defensive back. He can play in the NFL, but he could be a superstar wide receiver. And I kind of agree. When you watch him, when he has the ball in his hands, Jacoby's just special. And the same, I think, goes with Micah, but Micah is such a physical presence on the defensive side of the ball, and he's so good in coverage, and he's got long arms. Like he's a legit 6 foot, and he runs a legit 4.3, 4.4. So like everything about him screams defensive back. And I kind of think that's where he's headed to play alongside his teammate and Gentry Williams in the defensive backfield.
Okay, next question from the viewership, Brandon. Oklahoma's latest addition via the transfer portal is Tyler Guyton, the former TCU offensive lineman / H-back. Now, one thing that I noted when I did the write-up on Guyton is that his high school teammate and college teammate at TCU is one O'Shawn Mathis, the tremendous edge rusher at TCU, who is currently in the transfer portal and has not announced a destination as of yet. Does that maybe give Oklahoma some legs in the race for Mathis?
I haven't heard his name. I know Oklahoma's reached out. Other than that, I don't know a whole lot. I mean, that's kind of where it stands. Everybody I talk to seems to think that he's headed to Texas. Because he's really, really close with Gary Patterson. So you would think maybe Oklahoma could get in there because they need an edge guy. And Brent Venables is notorious for putting guys like that into the NFL. So why would you not at least give Oklahoma a look? and see what could happen. But him playing against Gary Patterson, as close as they are, from my understanding, I just don't know that I see it. When I get off here, though, I'm definitely going to start looking around on that.
Okay. Comparison between Mycates and Billy Bowman. That's one thing that one viewer would like to know about. And I think
Mike is bigger by far.
Yeah, Mike is way bigger and more physically built.
Yes.
I think Bowman is probably more explosive and a bit more versatile. I think Tease's strength, as Brandon was just touching on, is the fact that he plays very physical, and he's much more of a force player than a finesse player. And that's not to say that he doesn't have agility or elusiveness in the open field, because he's got all those things. But whereas I think Bowman's strength was found in his ability to break away with speed and change directions on a dime, Tease's strength is much more so that he is physical at the line and can mess you up and can get up in your face. And so I don't know that whether they're quite cut from the same cloth. I think naturally, in terms of their positional versatility and just the mold, I think there are similarities, but I don't know if I would necessarily draw parallels between those two.
Yeah, one is bigger, and that obviously being Mycates. The other one is smaller and more twitchy. Now, they're both speedsters. They both have amazing speed, but I think as far as change of direction and being hard to tackle in a phone booth, I would give Billy Bowman that tenfold over Micah.
Well, Billy Bowman would have that edge over just about anybody.
Yeah, so I mean but Mike is a special talent. Mike is a guy I think has a chance to be a 5-star when it's all said and done. I think he's that good. I mean, he's going to put up track numbers that are going to put that. I think he's going to skyrocket now, and we've seen it. We have.
Yes, we have.
I think him. I think Billy Bowman, and I think Jacoby Johnson. Not Billy, but sorry, Mycates, by Job, and Jacoby Johnson have a chance to just fly up the 247. And obviously Jacoby's been moving backwards, but when his film comes out and for basketball and what he does, and then what he does in track, I think is going to change the whole narrative. And I think with Eric Mccarty, I think he's going to end up being a top 250 kid when it's all said and done, because I was talking to somebody that said he's probably going to run under 11-second 100 meter this year. So if that really does happen, he's going to skyrocket up with what he's done on the field as well. So look, OK Preps has a chance to really have some special talents here moving forward, especially in 2023. I think as far as top heavy goes, this is one of the better top heavy classes we've seen in a long time. And we haven't even talked about Morgan Pearson, who is an absolute stud.
You got to keep in mind right now, the highest rated player in the 24/7 sports composite in the state of Oklahoma is Luke Haas, who was committed to Oklahoma for quite a while and has since pledged to Arkansas. But
him and Joe
you're talking
up there.
Yeah. You're talking about Luke Haas in that conversation. We touched on Cole Adams earlier, and then that dude down there in Ardmore, Morgan Pearson, who is picking up steam as well.
Mm-hmm. Could be getting, I think Baylor's starting to push really hard after him as well. So we'll see. Oklahoma is actually looking at him as a linebacker. He measured at 6'2.5", 233 pounds. And look, we saw him at the combine, and he was an alpha dog at the combine at the wide receiver position at 233 pounds.
Which is crazy to think about.
That is
Isn't that
crazy
a guy
to think
wide
about.
receiver at that way? And he carries his weight so well. And I think that
doesn't look like he weighs 233 at all. Yeah.
No, he doesn't. But you can tell he's just dense. He's thick. He's got legs like tree trunks, and it hasn't come at the cost of any speed or agility for him either. Like as he's gotten bigger over the years, he's maintained and in fact increased his speed and agility, which makes him a viable Power 5 option as a wide receiver, even though very seldom do you see a
tight end or edge rusher if he keeps doing what he's doing. Woo.
Exactly. And I think edge rusher linebacker is probably where programs such as Oklahoma will give him a look.
Yep.
I know we touched on it already, but we got people asking. R. Mason Thomas and Ahmad Moten, the Cardinal Gibbons teammates. So let's kind of rehash that whole conversation. The two were on a visit to Miami, their last official visit over the weekend. Oklahoma was considered the front runner for both heading into that visit. Now, Brandon, I'll kind of lay it out and you can kind of expound a little further upon it. In the aftermath of that visit, and I'm going to hop on a call with Moten later tonight, so I'll get an even better gauge to where things stand. But it seems that in the aftermath of that visit, that Oklahoma has remained the front runner for Ahmad Moten, but maybe, just maybe, Iowa State is going to have a say in this race for R. Mason Thomas as well.
Yeah, no, look, I didn't know you were done talking there. I'm over here reading Cole Adams's tweet about Alabama. It's like the fourth time it's popped up, and I'm still stunned. Yeah, look, this R. Mason Thomas deal has become quite the battle between three programs. You got Iowa State, who he's been committed to for a long time. You have Oklahoma, who came in and surged after they offered in December. Then you have here Johnny come lately, Miami, who just has a location being right down the road, about 40-minute drive from Cardinal Gibbons High School. And he had never been to the campus of Miami up until this weekend. And that'll just blow your mind. Like, because that's how little Miami paid attention to R. Mason Thomas and Ahmed Moten up until just recently when Mario Cristobal shows up. Does that help or does that hurt Miami? We're going to find out on National Signing Day. But what we do know is that Oklahoma's still there with both of them. I would probably lean Oklahoma with Ahmed Moten. I don't think Miami, with the lack of defensive coordinator, the lack of just overall coaches, assistants trying to stick around there, like they hire them and then they end up going someplace else right now. And I think that's been an issue. And the kids aren't stupid. They take notice of that type of stuff. And obviously other programs use that against Miami. And if they don't, that is just kind of I would find a program crazy that's recruiting somebody if they didn't use that against them. I'm sorry. That's just the way the recruiting world works. But it seems like this thing's going to go down to the wire. You said, when you talked to R. Mason Thomas, you kind of got the hint that Miami made a big surge with him, but that Iowa State and Oklahoma were like right there at the top still. I'm kind of hearing the same thing on the back end where, our Mason Thomas side is talking to Iowa State and the Oklahoma side saying, look, you guys are still right there. No final decision's been made. I think right now, if we were to make the pick, I don't know where my heart's at and where my head's at with this. I don't know yet. I'm trying to gather all that. If you would have asked me 3 days ago, I would have said Oklahoma. If you ask me now, I would probably say I give Oklahoma a 45% chance. I would give Iowa State a 35% chance, and I would give, what does that leave? That leaves what?
20%?
Yeah, 20% Miami. But that in the next 72 hours, that's going to change so much, or 48 hours. That's going to change a ton.
And it has changed so much in the last
already,
72 hours.
Yeah.
Because like you said, who would have figured at this time last week that Iowa State was going to have any legitimate chance to retain our Mason Thomas?
No,
it looked like for a minute there, he was going anywhere but Iowa State. Right. He visited Kentucky in December. He'd been talking to LSU. He took the OVs to Oklahoma and Miami very late in the cycle. It is very rare that you see a guy like that stick with his original commitment after opening the door up and exploring all of those options along the way. So first off, if that happens, mad props to Matt Campbell and his staff.
Absolutely.
Because that instantly becomes one of the more remarkable recruiting jobs of this cycle. But also it's one of those things that you kind of have to see it to believe it, just because it's so seldom that you witness a scenario like that unfold. And look, at this point, I'm pretty much going down with the ship. I've believed strongly that Oklahoma is going to end up with Thomas over the last 4 to 6 weeks, just because of what I know and the dynamics relationship with Brent Venables and how far back those two go. I trust Brent Venables to close on that deal. But again, that is a huge recruiting win for Matt Campbell over Brent Venables if they can hang on to R. Mason Thomas. And
we discussed it earlier. The fact that we're even having this discussion shows you the difference in perception of Iowa State now in comparison to what it was 4 or 5 years ago when it comes to the program. I mean, the program is actually viewed as a good program. And even when the transfers were happening, you had kids that were going to look at transfer in there, and you're like, whoa, that doesn't make sense. But after they got done visiting Iowa State, they're like, dude, that place is like legit when it comes to facilities. They have everything you want in the book. They put so much money into that football program, and Matt Campbell's reaping the benefits of it. And probably why you haven't seen him go anywhere. And
Well, and I'll tell you this much, another perfect example. One of the prospects that I've built a really good relationship with in the class of 2023 is Sean Davion Bradley, who is, according to our 24/7 sports rankings, the number 43 overall prospect in the country, regardless of position, from Platte County, Missouri. And Oklahoma was in a real good spot with him before the staff turnover, and they're going to have to work to get back in a good standing with him with the new staff in town, and he'll be on campus March 5th. But the reason I bring him up, Brandon, is because right now, if you made me enter a crystal ball prediction as to who's going to land Sean Davion Bradley, I would lay my crystal ball on Iowa State. That's a top 50 overall player.
Right.
Iowa State doesn't land guys like that. At least not historically.
He's out of state too. That's the other thing. Out of state. He's not an in-state kid. He's an out-of-state kid. And I mean, that's where everything is. Like, they've been good as a program since 2019, and as long as Matt Campbell's going to be there, they're going to be a problem. He's going to continue to build on that recruiting, and as he gets better recruiting, so does that program get better overall. So he's turned down jobs and stayed at Iowa State, and I think at the end of the day, that's going to be. I think that's what's going to make the Big 12 such a dynamic conference, even when Oklahoma and Texas leave and you make the additions of Houston, UCF, Memphis, and who's the other one? Cincinnati.
Well, it's Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU.
Cincinnati, BYU. Okay. I always, for some odd reason, I think Memphis every time, but yeah,
it seems like Memphis has been in the conversation for a Big 12 expansion program for a decade.
Well, you throw those four, and then you have Iowa State, Oklahoma State, TCU, those type of programs. I mean, come on. The Big 12 is going to be a good football program or football conference for years to come with those additions. And Iowa State could be the linchpin of it all, being the top dog. Them and Oklahoma State could be fighting, for supremacy each and every year from here on out, along with Cincinnati. So this is going to be Matt Campbell makes this thing all interesting. And I don't know. Like I said, I can't make a pick right now. Like, I really can't. Like, it's that much of a flip of the coin that I would sit here and say, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 48 hours because it's changed so much. And as these coaches get on the phone with these kids for like hours at a time, and they somehow hit some sort of pressure point with the kid, and then the other program hits a pressure point with the kid's going to change his mind up into National Signing Day, and whoever they sign with, they're even going to second guess who they sign with. They're not going to put up that front. But I've talked to enough kids to know I was nervous. I signed and I just walked away from it because I wasn't sure I was making the right decision. I've heard that so many times. You're asking 17, 18-year-old kids to make a decision for the next 3 to 4 years of their lives. Now, I think the transfer portal is going to I think that alleviates some pressure now because you can just, I'm tired of it. I'm going to go someplace else. But it's still pressure. There's still a ton of pressure from all sorts of fan bases, from thousands of people. And that's what makes these things change. These kids change their mind 1,000 times in 24 hours leading up to National Signing Day. And that's what's probably going to happen here with our Mason Thomas.
All right, Brandon, as we get ready to close things out, this is one that you'll be able to speak to probably more so than anybody, but one of our viewers asked, any chances for OU with By Job? And I can tell you this much, just based off his experience this weekend, OU made some big strides in that race. And Absolutely. They were a little later to the party than a lot of the other P5 schools that have offered By Job. But especially being right up the road at Norman Community Christian, Brandon, you would figure that even if the Sooners don't get Job at the end of the day, it's going to be really, really difficult for him to say no to the hometown program.
I mean, By doesn't hold back when he talks to people, and I've known By. He's one of my claims to fame here. I found By Job and kind of put his name out there for people to see, and his film and took his measurements and did all that so that he could get noticed. And we talked him into playing football. So I love that kid. But yeah, Oklahoma definitely has a chance here. I was talking to him, just exchanging text messages with him the other day, and by Job fashion, he says, "I like this staff so much better." So I mean, that tells you so. That tells you where, because he doesn't hold back of what he's saying. He just kind of, it's just his culture. It's who he is. Like, I'm gonna tell you, he did not like how the previous staff was trying to get him to walk on and do all the, because he was essentially a legacy with his adopted family being the Bonds and all that stuff, and them being donors at Oklahoma and owning Oklahoma Orthopedic and all that sorts of stuff. They thought, well, he can afford to walk on and we can get this big name guy and the family's going to push him to Oklahoma. That's not how this is going to work. They're going to let By Job make his own decision. Vanderbilt's there. And people ask, like, how is Vanderbilt up there? Well, they have a couple of coaches that are foreign guys from Africa, from Jamaica, that type of place. And they relate to By. When you add the academic, these people, these kids from North Africa and just from Africa in general, and By being from Senegal, they take the academic portion of it all very seriously. So the fact that Vanderbilt is a very academic type of university is going to harbor some strong interest from By Job. And then obviously you have Oklahoma State that's pushing hard. You have Arkansas. You have a bunch of these programs. Texas is looking to offer. Texas A&M's looking to offer now. He talks to all these programs that are pushing really hard. So it's not a foregone conclusion that Joe, even though his family is very pro Oklahoma, being and him living in Norman. Now, at the end of the day, do I think that he ends up at OU? Yes, I think he ends up at Oklahoma. But I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. And I couldn't put a crystal ball in if I wanted to right now because I wouldn't trust it if I did. And I know you guys got a text message. Somebody asked comparison. Terrell Suggs. And that came from 3 different college coaches that told me they think Terrell Suggs because of his frame and his lack of. Terrell Suggs didn't play a lot of football leading up to his time in college. He was new to it all. And just how long and rangy By Job is, the same position, defensive end. He weighs 230 pounds right now, but he looks like he weighs 205. I mean, the kid's going to put on a ton of weight. He's got almost a 7-foot wingspan. I mean, he's a freak. He is a freak of nature. He's 11-foot broad jump. I mean, the guy is a certified star in the making. I think he had 16 and a half sacks his first year of ever playing football. First full season he ever played. 16 and a half sacks. That's impressive. And that's kind of where the Suggs comparison came from a couple of the college coaches that I talked to. And they just think that his overall ceiling is that high because he has no base for anything. He's just learning on the fly as he goes. Like the kid literally knows nothing about hand placement, all that stuff. He just does it and just goes and plays the game of football and somehow dominates. So, I mean, that's kind of where the Sugg comparison came to.
Well, and it makes you wonder, right? When you have a guy like that that's so raw but so dominant, how dominant is he going to be once you teach him technique? And I think that's why everybody is so excited about By Job's ceiling, is because if he's putting up the type of production that he is without having an innate technical knowledge of the game, once you start to cultivate those things for a guy like By Job, the ceiling gets incredibly high very quickly. All right, Brandon, that's all we got time for as we're running up against our 6 p.m. wrap time. So why don't you give everybody the closing spiel?
Look, man, National Sign Day is rolling right around, and we've kind of made it easy for you guys to sign up for OUinsider.com. I'm about to drop a bunch of notes on OU Insider here in the next hour, and been on the phone all day, been out here in Dallas, seeing a couple things. I'm going to go see Jayden Toviano tomorrow, the 5-star 2023 defensive back who's visiting Oklahoma in March. I'm going to see the 5-star edge rusher, defensive lineman, DJ Hicks tomorrow as well. 2024 edge rusher, Zena Umeozulu, as well tomorrow, and a couple of other guys that Oklahoma's really hot and heavy on, and has a really good chance to land. And we're going to have notes on that. We're going to have notes on our Mason Thomas. We're going to have notes on Jamarian Burt, a bunch of other big junior day targets. I got junior day stuff I'm going to drop here, like I said, in the next hour. Parker has some stuff coming. We're going to do some question and answers after National Signing Day. So after National Signing Day, I always do a question and answer where you can ask questions about stuff that I couldn't say during the whole process because you just can't do it. So we're going to do a lot of that, and we're going to have that all for you on OU Insider VIP, which means you can sign up. If you're not a member right now, you can sign up for 60% off. That means what's normally like $108 is only $42 right now. $42, you can get all the way through next National Signing Day if you sign up right now. And that's huge. That's a year's. You get spring, you get all the official visits in the spring, you get the official visits in the summer, the unofficial visits in the summer, the transfers, fall practice, winter workouts, spring workouts and practices that we cover, all the insider team information that's coming from the summer camp and everything leading up to fall practices, and plus the season and all the 2023 class recruiting and the first National Signing Day in December on through the bowl games as well. So if you want to do all that, sign up. We would love to have you. You guys have made OU Insider one of the top 3 or 4 fastest growing 247 sites in the whole network of 250 sites. We can't thank you guys enough. We're on pace for like 17 million right now page views. And look, you guys made that happen. You OU fans make that happen. We can't thank you guys enough. But right now, 60% off right now for 1 year, or you can do $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. That's going to do it for the OU Insider YouTube Live. I want to thank you guys for being here with Parker and myself. You guys have a blessed day, and we will see you guys here in a couple of days when we do